My name is Heidi, and I'm a grateful believer in Jesus. And the reason I came to Celebrate Recovery was for mental health challenges. And I was driving today after work and just thinking about tonight, and the thought came to me that for those that don't come here on a regular basis, we listen to a testimony every other week. And usually they're on the screen, and they're from the ministry and people that have these chapters of Celebrate Recovery all over the country. And not always, but there has been a theme of people that are here that unfortunately and sadly, their problems started very young due to a broken home. And I was driving today, and I was just like overcome with thanksgiving that that is not part of my story. And if that's part of your story, I'm sorry. And I wish it wasn't that way, because I think God has meant marriage to last forever. And just really thankful for my mom and dad. And they're here tonight, and they're a big part of where I am today. And, you know, mental health does not discriminate. It entered our family. It's on both sides of the family. My brothers have never struggled with it, but I have. And this is my story. So that I really feel like God has written, and He's written all your stories. And it just feels... I feel so blessed that I have friends here. I have my mom's prayer team. She has been part of different praying mom groups since I was a kid. And the most recent one that she joined 4 years ago was specifically for moms praying for their adult children. Like, that's all they do. They pray for their adult children and whatever aspects, jobs, relationships, spirituality. And so for 22 months, which I'll explain in my testimony, I pretty much huddled at my parents' house due to paranoia. And these women prayed for me weekly, and friends and family prayed for me weekly. And He prepared the perfect job for me when I was ready to work again. And it's just, I don't know, it's a joy to stand here before you today. And if I'm reading too fast, just like slow me down. So. Anyway, thank you so much for that introduction and prayer, Renee. All right. It's truly an honor to stand before you tonight to give a testimony of God's goodness, His protection, His provision, and how He ultimately has led me out of the darkness that I was living in. My God has relentlessly pursued me, and today, though years of disappointments, seasons of complete brokenness, depression, living with an unmanaged mental health diagnosis, and dashed hopes, I stand here today feeling much like a new creation. God has worked in my life in such a way that I truly feel like I'm living a new life. So I was born September 19th, 1985, I'm 35, to two loving parents and two incredible older brothers, 5 and 7 years older than me. Tori and Eric were my buddies. I loved biking in the neighborhood. My mom would be the first to say I fell a lot. I would come screaming in with fresh scrapes and bruises from my falls, but nothing seemed to stop me from getting back up on my bike. I felt so free on it. I also loved swimming in our pool, always trying to take on a new challenger to have some races. I remember feeling fearless as a child. I saw the wonder of God's creation, especially on our trips to Tennessee in the mountains. I felt like I was a part of an amazing family, and life in my eyes was good. When I was 7 years old, I experienced my first real devastation in my life. My parents lost a baby. I remember crying on the floor and being so confused how that could happen. I will never forget that sadness I felt as I cried on the old brown carpet in the back of the house. My dad tried to comfort me. During around that same time, my dad was between ministry jobs. As I look back on that period of life, I often wonder how my parents had it all together. But they did, and they also would give a testimony of God's provision and goodness. At the time, I was pretty settled at a small Christian school. It was a good place for me, but I struggled academically, and I was constantly feeling inadequate and that I couldn't keep up. Through a string of events, my dad was being pursued by a ministry in Halifax, Nova Scotia, only 2,000 miles from our town of Bradenton, Florida, where we had a beautiful relationship with my grandparents, my grandma and grandpa. Within just a few short months, we made the transition from sunny Florida to northern eastern Canada. My dad started at the ministry. My mom held down home life as my brothers and I adjusted to Canadian public schools halfway through the year. All three of us walked to and from school, and we'd walk home for an hour-and-a-half lunch break. It was amazing. And those days were great for me. We all found a place to belong at our new church and got involved in activities. I even took up competitive Highland dancing, which I came to love, especially competing all over the Maritimes. I would say that the next 7 years of my life that I lived there in Halifax were the best years of my life. We lived in a small, safe city where I was free to ride my bike, to explore with my friends, and even venture out alone. I eventually transferred to a small Christian school, leaving the public school, and I loved growing up with the same kids year after year. It was a safe place, and it fit me so well. When I say the best years of my life, that doesn't mean I haven't had great years since, but things changed in the year 2000. So, in the summer of 2000, my parents and I returned to the United States for my dad to take a full-time pastoral job outside Boston. I was 14, a freshman in high school. My brothers had already returned to the States for college, and my parents felt it was time for us to be back in the same country for a multitude of reasons, but one, so that our family could be closer. This shift affected me a lot. I was saying goodbye to my beautiful childhood of Nova Scotia and entering the States. And to be honest, I had become very Canadianized, as my grandma used to say. I made the decision to attend a public high school. I went from a small private school in Canada to a large public high school, and I simply did not feel like I belonged. I joined the marching band, and nothing against marching band if anyone was in marching band, but it just wasn't my job. It wasn't for me, but I stayed to fulfill my commitment. I felt alone and out of place, not only at my school, but at the church that my dad was the senior pastor at. It was not a fun feeling. It was expensive to make calls like that on a regular basis, calling back to Canada to my friends. So I took to pen and paper, and it was always a great day when I received a letter in the mail from home. I persevered during those years. I joined both cross-country and track teams, and I loved it. I seemed to find my place there and enjoyed being the captain and helping underclassmen feel like they belonged and could work at a sport as well. I got pretty good grades, A's and B's, the occasional C. I worked hard at anything I put my mind to. But under all the busyness and the leadership roles, I felt an extreme sense of feeling alone. It's hard to describe my spiritual experience since I had been raised in a faith-filled home, which I'm forever grateful for. But it was during those 4 years in high school back in the States that God truly became personal to me. I craved reading the Bible on my own and journaling out my thoughts and my feelings. Jesus truly felt like my friend. I would talk to God as I walked to class, and I would talk to him about my loneliness. I would not describe it as depression in any way, but just a self-perception of myself during those years. However, that all changed my spring semester of my senior year. Out of thin air, I became depressed clinically. It's hard to even go back to that spot because it felt like out of nowhere. Out of thin air, I became depressed. I was scared to go to college. I no longer cared to take care of myself physically, and I left my discipline and my love of running go. My brothers flew in for my high school graduation, and my mom put on a wonderful open house to celebrate my life and accomplishments. Let me tell you, there is nothing more exhausting than faking it for everyone around you, and I certainly felt it that weekend. That summer, before I headed off to Taylor University, I felt foreign to myself. I couldn't grasp the depression-like feelings. I recognized that I had a good life, a wonderful family, friends, but I couldn't shake the feelings. In the summer of 2004, just weeks before my parents drove me to Indiana for college, my mom took me to see a psychiatrist. It was scary. The man, Dr. Starr, I believe was his name, was straight out of a Hollywood movie. His office was a complete mess, and he literally was like leaning half on his chair because it was broken. And I'm sitting there with my mom thinking, like, where have you brought me? And I think she thought the same thing. Whew. He slapped a diagnosis on me within the first 10 minutes of meeting me. And that started a very scary journey of trying to trust doctors, yet not all at the same time. I honestly could probably spend the next couple of hours describing my 8 years in and out of college due to my up and down battle with what ultimately came known to us as bipolar 1. I found the stigma of the illness that I placed on myself so suffocating. I never wanted anyone to know my internal battle. When I was well, I felt happy and self-confident, and when I wasn't, I just didn't want to participate in life. In December 2010, I checked myself into a residential treatment facility for women in Lafayette, Indiana. It was there that I truly came to understand the theology of suffering and that God wanted to use my struggles for His glory. During being a resident in that program, I got the opportunity to return to Taylor University and finally finish my undergraduate degree in communication. My dream in college was to one day write, travel, and speak. When the Lord laid that dream on my heart, I had no idea what I would speak about. I even remember a family member asking me, "Heidi, what's your platform?" And I responded, "This is year 2005, and I remember it to this day. I was on a sidewalk in Toledo, Ohio, and I said, I'll figure it out one day." So I feel like this is a little bit about part of that, I'll figuring it out one day. Once graduating from college at the age of 26, I thought things would get a little easier. That was the furthest from reality. I finally had to leave the safety net of the residential treatment facility. I had to hit the reality that I was well enough mentally to have a full-time job, and I had to take care of myself like other young professionals. In the late summer of 2012, I officially graduated from Taylor. My soon-to-be boss stated to me when offering me what seemed like a dream job, "I am excited to mentor you on to bigger and better things." I thought, this boss is going to be a dream to work for. No. I entered a management job and excelled in many ways, but learning the ins and outs of the adult workforce was extremely difficult. Within 2 weeks of starting at the university management job, I felt nauseous on Sundays thinking about Monday, and I seemed to live for Fridays every day of the week. Just a few days before Easter, I made the decision I could just not return to my job. And part of me could go on and on about that experience, but truly the Lord has healed that, and so there's very little emotion to even describe that experience, but I would sum it up as workplace bullying, and my boss saw me as a threat, and she was going through her own stuff, just like all of us, and she took it out on me. Yeah. Leaving this job under the circumstances that I had was so difficult. I do know that my mental health played a role in all of this, but it's hard to know what was affecting both since both things were both so unhealthy. I had to leave my upscale, fancy downtown apartment that I was so proud to have. I moved into a basement apartment with no windows and ended up taking a social work-based job at a local long-term care facility. I felt so stressed about my bills and really the aftermath of leaving the former job. Not one person knew how bad things had become with my former employer. This was ultimately due to my pride. I did not want anyone knowing I was struggling with my boss. On August 26, 2013, I wanted to escape all reality, and I took my life into my own hands and tried to end it. God ultimately had his way in the matter because I'm still here today, and I'm so grateful for that. It was just a few months after that lowest point in my life that I came to North Carolina. I basically wanted to run away from my problems in Indiana. But I really feel like God had his hand on my life so many times, and he brought me to the sweetest little community in the western North Carolina called Morganton, North Carolina, in March of 2014. God placed me in this incredible supportive community, and in many ways it felt like a fresh start. But my battle with bipolar never left me. It became evident that I needed family support, so after 3 years, I moved here to the Raleigh area, which would be 4 years ago, when my folks, who had retired here a year prior from New Hampshire. The first 22 months, I huddled inside their home. They were unaware of just how ill I had become. Paranoia had taken over, and I wanted no one to know. Paranoia is an extremely scary place to be because your reality is actually not reality. 2 years ago, I was transported to Holly Hill Hospital Psychiatric Unit in Raleigh by the Fuquay Police, where I spent almost a month. I got on the right medications for me and finally started to handle some past hurts in my life. Hurts that I had never addressed. It's almost like I went head to head with my past and head to head with my mental illness and finally accepted all of it. All of it made me up, and I had to be okay with it. My past didn't have to define me or hold me back. It could propel me forward if I became honest with who I truly was. Coming here to celebrate recovery has been such a wonderful experience. I came not long after getting out of the hospital, and it's been the women in this program that have seen me make progress in my life and has supported me along the way, along with my wonderful parents, my mom's prayer group, with whom several are here tonight, my current employer and friend, who is also here tonight, and a few local friends who are also here. The verse that comes to me is Ephesians 3:20. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine, according to his great power. God's done that in me. Last June, I made the trip back to Indiana during the middle of COVID. I was able to visit with my old employer and have lunch with my former boss's direct supervisor, who also no longer worked there. The healing that came from that experience was so freeing. I have occurred all that went on during that time of employment. It took me 7 years. I'm not sure why it took me so long to let it go, but God in his timing has allowed me to reach this place of true forgiveness to the point that I can't even fully describe it to you because it's just gone. That's what comes with true forgiveness. You forget how bad it was. When I think back to that experience, my journey with bipolar 1, coming to terms that I'm a survivor of attempted suicide, and many other things I didn't even mention here tonight, I am reminded of an experience I just had about 2 weeks ago. I took a day trip to Roan Mountain, Tennessee, and my uncle died suddenly, and I wanted some peace. And I had already been out there early that morning for my own thing, and I got to the top and I saw this hiker with this incredible huge pack, and I mean the dude had like additional things like attached to it, and just in the quietness of me meeting with God on top of that mountain, I just felt like God say like that used to be you. I was diagnosed with this when I was 19 years old, and I'm 35 now. And it's just been within the process of the last 2 years that pack is like nowhere near me, like doesn't exist. And it's just so freeing, so freeing. And I'll never get that image out of my mind because it was just like an appointment that God had for me that day on the top of Roan Mountain. It was amazing. I don't know why it took so many years to accept this struggle that, for whatever the reason, God has allowed in my life. But true acceptance has taken place. I live with a mental illness. I see my CR ladies, Celebrate Recovery ladies, as my tribe. Even with moving out to Montana next Wednesday, I know that they are just a text or a phone call away. That is the true body of Christ. Like, I get that every Thursday night, and I typically don't necessarily feel like that on a Sunday morning, but I feel it on Thursday nights here, and it's incredible. I will miss this community greatly, the incredible experience I have had with doing life with the Adams family these past 2 years. Many of you know that I am a full-time nanny. I am in charge of 2 little precious souls from 7:30 in the morning till mid-afternoon. It was in their nursery last year at their old home that I started calling out to God as my friend again. He never left me. I had become distant. God uses all things to teach and strengthen us. I used to manage a staff of over 80, and today it's just 2. And I have counted as one of the greatest honors of my life to build into these little girls and pray over their life and try to create memories for them. I will always count my last few years here in Fuquay as a cherished time in my life where God has met me, has supplied for all of my needs, and brought me deep emotional healing in my life. As the verse in Psalms 31:25 says, she is smiling at the days to come. Thank you so much for being here.